Okay, so I've seen this thing pop up for like quite a while, I mean, quite a few times everywhere all over Instagram, and it's basically people saying that 2020 is like the worst year and how bad can 2020 get, and it's been memed as well, but is it really like the worst year? I mean, it's definitely in like the top 10 worst years, but in the bottom half, it quite possibly might be the 10th worst year that could have ever possibly occurred. But it's not like truly honest. It's not terrible in every sense because this year, even though it was labeled as the worst year and it had valid reasons to be labeled as one, but it did have quite a few good turnovers. First one being that the greenhouse gases, like these environmental unfriendly gases, they have been lowered in concentration in the atmosphere quite a bit from like the start of the year. It couldn't be labeled as like the biggest change, but it is some sort of a change. And the second is the fact that people are finally standing up against injustice. And I mean, you could label the things going on in America as, terrible and awful, but finally something is happening against injustice, but people are speaking out against it, that these cases are being brought up and they're not being silenced anymore, that there's reforms in the system. You could say that it's like a pretty good change for me. It's sure it's disheartening to think that, I mean, it still exists, like racism still exists, but now you're seeing people speak up actively against it and they're not being suppressed as much as they were in like past years. So that could be seen as a good sign of a good thing. I mean, I honestly don't know much about what's going on in there, but at least there's some sort of change than being just completely passive and silent about things that have been being really, really bad. Another is that like, and based on that topic, that people are now being more vocal than they were before about being justly treated. Like if someone is having domestic abuse and subjected to domestic violence, I mean, right now I don't think they will be that silent about it. They'd rather be more vocal because they see this movement as some sort of initiative and they see that as inspiration to speak about their unjust past and all of that stuff. And that's a change. That's a good thing. And a lot of people in this lockdown, they are changing for the better. Like first you see people, they're being less productive, they're slots, they're slacking off, and nowadays you see them like changing in their households because they have nothing to do. They kind of realize that, and now they're being more productive. I am a valid example. And another thing is that like this, the pandemic, they have brought a lot of people's attention towards how diseases and like basic general knowledge about them and how important it is to be aware about hygiene and like how important a doctor's job and the scientist's job and the research facility is. So I feel like they're getting more credited than they were before this all. I mean, right now, I mean, they would get even more credited if there was a vaccine would be developed and people would use it and be actually effective. Talking about my personal experience with the pandemic and the lockdown and this year just in general, I'm not gonna talk about anything else but the pandemic because that's literally all that I've experienced in this year so far. Yes, my life is pretty boring. But this did actually make me more productive than it did when I was like in the starting months. I was not productive at all. I'm sure I did go to like tuitions and studied more than other people did, but I was not managing my time well enough to be saying that I was productive back then as I was now. And even in like the first 2 months of the lockdown, I was not productive at all. I just spent all my time on the phone and watching videos on YouTube till I did not like find any more videos interesting. I just ran out of videos to watch, and then I realized like I cannot believe I've seen everything I wanted to see in this pandemic. In like literally 2 months I've seen everything I wanted to see. So I decided to like manage my time better, and I made like a schedule, and right now I'm keeping up with my syllabus quite nicely. Also like started working out as well. Like I did not do that in previous years. My dad tried to get me into working out so that I'd at least be like a fit, perfectly good shape, but I did not do that because I was just unwilling. But in the lockdown, making the timetable, making a schedule, I saw that I could fit that, and I adopted it. And right now, I've done progress basically. And from what I started out in the beginning of the year to right now, there's decent progress, and I'm happy about that, and I want to keep that going. Another thing is that some other skills that I decided to learn, like for example, writing with my left hand, it's not good, but it is way better than like when I started out writing with my left hand. And I also learned beatbox a bit, basics of beatbox like BTK, but it is more than that, but not yet into the region where you can like add bass line along with BTK and other sort of instruments with your mouth. Basically, I'm not at that level, but I'm going there. And I've also started YouTube, which is another side thing that I'm gonna mention, because I wanted to get into YouTube for the past 2 years, but I just couldn't because I was like unwilling, and I had school, but now there's no school, and there's literally nothing stopping me from starting it. So I decided to start it, and yeah, I've been more productive than I ever was, and I changed as a person, and I really like that about myself. Now I want to change more. And yeah, this lockdown is gonna help me change more as a person. Later on, I want to try and increase my cardio, and so I can last longer. And I want to also learn a new language, maybe. Japanese is on my top list. Overall, the reason I think that I didn't find this year to be that bad is because I didn't experience the reasons that people listed out for it being a bad year. All I really did was just experience the pandemic, and that's it. And all the other reasons, either I did not experience them or they didn't bear any effect on me emotionally, mentally, or physically. So I can't say that this year is generally really a good year, nor I can say it's a bad year, because for me it's like a pretty normal year. Like all my previous years were basically not that good either, so I can't really say that this year was any better. I mean, it is better if you look at the fact that I'm sitting at home and not doing the things that I hate to do, like going to school and, all of that, talking to people, basically people coming in and all of that stuff. I hate to do that. I hate basically just basic human interaction. I hate that. So this year is good in that sense, but to other people it might be comparatively bad because they might actually have mental problems with this, but I'm fine. So for me personally, it's not a bad year. And if you're looking at it overall this year, comparing to it to 536, yeah, this year is not that bad. So yeah, I mean, at least you'd be grateful that you are alive and not dead. Like that is a good thing. If you look at it, I mean, if you want to be alive, where is this going? In the end, I think that how bad you think a year is depends solely on your perspective, and for me, it's not that bad, but other people might disagree with it, and that's it. That's basically my thoughts on why this year isn't that bad for me. Oh, and might I add, Indian TikTok got banned this year, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree that that's a good turnover that came from this year.